Spanish regular verbs that end with ER and IR por se la vi. Hopefully you remember what we talked about when we talked about conjugating verbs, that is taking subject pronouns or subjects, the people or the things that do an action, and we're going to change the form of the verb to fit the subject. Let's quickly take a look at this verb tomar. Tomar is a very common verb because it has a couple of really important meanings, such as to take and to drink. Let's quickly look at the endings for AR verbs. Yo tomo, usted toma, él toma, ella toma, nosotros tomamos, nosotras tomamos, ustedes toman, ellos toman, ellas toman. Okay, we have really good news in that ER regular verbs in Spanish are similar to AR regular verbs in Spanish, only rather than an A, you have an E, meaning the letter E. In addition, regular IR verbs are similar to ER verbs. The only difference in their endings will be for nosotros and nosotras, which end with imos. Why? Because these are IR verbs. But otherwise, they look almost identical to the endings of ER verbs. Let's take a look at some common verbs that end with ER in Spanish. Aprender, beber, comprender, correr, creer, deber, leer, prometer, vender. Now, let's take a look at deber, very common verb, which can mean to owe, as in to owe money, or it can mean must, or should, or ought to. I know those meanings look very different, but that's the truth. It can mean to owe, and it can mean must. Well, let's take a look. Take off the ER first, and add the appropriate ending. So it works like this. Yo debo, usted debe, él debe, ella debe, nosotros debemos, or nosotras debemos, ellos deben, ellas deben. Would you like to try another? Let's try one like correr. So if you were to say, I run, how would you do it? You'd take off the ER and you'd add an O, and it would be yo corro. If you wanted to conjugate a verb like leer, which means to read, and you wanted to say I read, you take off the ER and you add an O and you get leo. Once in a while there's a small exception, and this verb ver, obviously meaning to see, is a very common verb. It does have a little exception in the yo form, and you add the letter E before the O. Yo veo means I see. Usted ve, él ve, ella ve, nosotros vemos, nosotras vemos, ustedes ven, ellos ven, ellas ven. IR verbs are similar to ER verbs in their endings. Let's take a look at these common ones. Admitir, decidir, discutir, escribir, existir, insistir, recibir, sufrir, vivir. Taking a look at escribir, you take off the IR and you add the endings that you see in yellow, and then there's the notable one there, nosotros and nosotras, that ends with imos, I-M-O-S. Yo escribo, usted escribe, él escribe, ella escribe, nosotros escribimos, nosotras escribimos, ustedes escriben, ellos escriben, ellas escriben. Hasta entonces, se la vi 2020.